So there are some people who think the PlayStation 2 era was sort of a golden age for gaming. That may be old people suffering from a case of nostalgia. This was of course before we had Steam and we didn't have quite as much self-publishing, but it was kind of a new time for the industry. 3D gaming had only been around for a little while and the new processing power opened up a lot of doors. There were of course your heavy hitters still around like Square Enix and Nintendo, but there was also a lot of small companies trying to innovate, and we were seeing a lot of new intellectual property. Stuff like Destroy All Humans, Grand Theft Auto really made it big in that time, Armored Core, Wild Arms. Some of them weren't nearly as successful, but they could survive because they didn't have to put quite as much into making a product. It wasn't as expensive. In fact, plenty of those games were sequels to something else that didn't do quite as well, and they survived mediocrity because you could in that time. They just kept going until they hit on something that was really good. Or they stuck with the same formula, I guess, because they weren't sinking. It was a situation that was kinda good and kinda bad. Looking back, there are a lot of games that didn't age well at all. Wild Arms springs to mind, not because there's anything particularly bad about it, but its art is a little bit ugly. I mean, it wasn't pretty then, and time hasn't done it any favors. I think their scheme was that they were trying to fit a lot of data onto one disc, so they skimped a lot on the graphical stuff. This was kinda cool, I really like the story and I really like the game, but I think it must have made the game a little bit harder to market, and I wonder if it didn't get away with it completely. Defiance, however, had a pretty well-rounded approach. The graphics are good, the gameplay is solid, you can look back on it over the course of a couple years and say, okay, this came out pretty well. I don't know that it was a breakout smash hit, but it certainly had a following. Unfortunately, it got gobbled up like so many other intellectual properties of the time, and so now it's doomed. But it would be kinda neat to see something like this format in the future again. But anyway, let's get back to our game.
Hello everyone, my name is Taylor.
And I am Ray. And we will never get on a good schedule, yes. Well, you know, Peyton, it's really hard to get everybody together in one place. What are you talking about? We live together. Yeah, but you know, there's work schedules and stuff like that. Everyone's gotta be free.
I feel like sometimes you guys just never call me.
That's because I never call you, yes. I call you. It's just that sometimes I also fall asleep and then, you know, do that all day.
The worst times are probably when you call me, then fall asleep.
I can never tell if those are the worst times or if those are just like moderately good times. I recognize they're rude times, but for me, they're okay times.
Well, good that you get something out of it. I would draw dicks on your face, but I always forget to bring a Sharpie.
I feel like I get the comfort knowing that I have a friend, and then I get the comfort of going to bed. You could ask me for the Sharpie, yes.
Well, if you're seeking comfort just from knowing that I'm coming over, maybe I shouldn't draw dicks. Maybe I should get that Sharpie but then write a letter to you? I guess backwards so you could read it in the mirror. Dear Ray, came over. You were asleep. I went home. Have a good day.
Well, if you dot your I's with hearts, that would just be the sweetest thing. But anyway though, I kinda wanted to comment on how all these temples are like weirdly close to each other. They have this elaborate portal system, but you can really just like walk a few blocks down to the next temple.
I don't know, it kinda makes sense, because these portals could be taking you just about anywhere. And they're all kinda located around the pillars, because that sorta makes sense, it's a hub. Actually, what might make less sense is that all the portals aren't in one room.
Maybe some vampire deacon thought that everyone was getting lazy and fat, yes. So he fought tooth and nail to separate the portals out so the priests had to walk. That would explain why we have to move all these big rocks around. Yes, it is all about the physical labor. So I guess we can assume the vampire priesthood was pretty buff?
Or at least pretty magical. Kain can move stuff with his mind.
I just don't want to believe that all this is specifically for Raziel. I just can't imagine any kind of government council getting everyone to agree to spend all the taxpayer money on this sort of thing. Just for one guy, who shows up after everybody is dead. It's not secular, Ray. It was a religious thing. They did it for their faith. But there's 2 of every temple. How are you convincing everyone to stay in the faith? What is the faith doing for them? It's torturing their enemies, the stupid asshole Hildens, yes.
Yeah, we haven't actually excluded the possibility that this whole thing is motivated by racial prejudice, and they all assumed that Raziel was gonna continue to punish their enemies.
Do you think they held worship here, or tried? You mean in the puzzle-filled trap-lighted temples, yes. Yeah, I mean maybe they really like traps and puzzles.
Well, there's a jet of air perpetually blowing in this room, so it would be really drafty.
Well, nobody said religion had to be about comfort. I don't know, I just want to know something about this ancient race. Actually, really, I want to know something about just about anybody.
What do you mean?
Like about their culture, how did they live? Something aside from what they think of Raziel. Again through the cinnamon swirls I traveled, and came out in a temple adorned with the markings of air. Here I found a mural depicting the vampire's champion fighting some foe. That foe was carrying a burning sword. There was someone I was supposed to be fighting? I was a little excited to think I might have some adversary aside from Kain. You know when we were talking about Raziel, boy? I started thinking about what would happen if Raziel really did get away from Kain. You know, like and he didn't get sucked into the Reaver. What does he do after that? Like, where do you go?
Well, he retires from being a vampire, I guess.
He can't do that. He's gotta eat souls to live. The only way he retires is if he goes to the spirit world and lives with the spirits. That is lame, yes. Raziel would build his own empire. You mean like he'd take after Kain? Become the very guy that he hated? No, yes. He hated Kain. He would become Raziel. Just like Kain, though. I don't know. I kinda like to think that Raziel would sort of look at everything and say, you know, what's it all for? I've got eternity now, and I have no crotch, and no way to make sons. What do I do? There is no point in history when Raziel isn't causing trouble. Yes, he obviously goes and causes trouble. That's why he was the first lieutenant. No, he goes on a farm and gets a dog. I'm sorry, I couldn't make that out. Did we cut something important from that conversation? No.
Yeah, basically Raziel goes, hey, chump, and the guy goes, I want to kill you, chump.
Man, if only we could have conversations with these ghosts. We would learn so much. All our questions would be answered.
That's probably why we're not allowed to have conversations with them.
What is the rule for being a ghost? How come they turn into skeletons? Shouldn't they look like their normal selves with flesh and blood?
Maybe their souls decompose along with their bodies.
So what, if they weren't buried in these tombs, they would just, rot away and not be ghosts anymore?
That kind of follows, I guess, Egyptian logic. Like, you preserve the body so it can survive in the afterlife.
But there's other ghosts and they don't have bodies around and they look kind of like people. Like, sort of. A little more meaty. But they have no legs, Ray. Yes. Neither does this guy. You know what I think is funny and is one of my favorite parts about the spectral realm? Yes. All the voices in the background. Specifically that lady that keeps crying, yes. It is the same lady every time. I kinda wish that Raziel could go find her and say hey, shut up! Yes.
Throw an old boot at her like a cat?
Aw, guys, that's mean. What if she's sad because of, taxes?
Why taxes?
Because death and taxes. I'm sad about taxes.
The entire concept of the afterlife is actually pretty bleak in this game. I mean, you can hear the souls of the dead crying and wishing that there was no more afterlife.
Well, you don't have to sit around and cry. You could also be devoured by the Elder Squid. So that means if we kill the Elder Squid, yes, we will be dooming all souls to an eternity of death. Just blow. And sad. Also those little gremlin guys.
Oh yeah, the gremlin guys are there to eat souls, so everything is fine. No worries at all.
Yeah, the souls have somewhere to go, or some stomach to be. You know, it is the shame there is not a civilization in the spirit world, yes. The ancient race was able to see somewhat into it. They made pathways in the spirit world, yes.
That must have been a little horrifying. It's no wonder they believed in religion. They must have seen that and said, oh wow, is that what happens when you die? Gosh.
Yeah, and then the Elder Squid was like, no, it's not nearly as bad as it looks. Look, you dive into my mouth and I will keep you safe from all the little green guys, okay?
You know, the idea of heaven actually always scared me more than the idea of a void. Because when you go to heaven, you feel nothing but pleasure, and I always thought that was like a blinking of your personality, of who you were. But it's like a calculated blinking, like a higher power decides that you will no longer be yourself. You will just be this happy little cloud of happy.
But at least you'll be happy about losing all sense of identity. Yes! Well, I think the idea behind it is that heaven is not going to be a thing you don't like, otherwise that wouldn't serve the purpose.
I don't know, I just think that, heaven, if you had to be happy all the time, if it's a place where you go to be happy all the time, then that means you can't have, anger or sadness or disappointment. So, you must just feel nothing but happiness. You're like a blank little cloud of happiness.
Okay, so what's the problem with that, I guess?
Well, you're a blank cloud. It's the same as if you were in the void, except for somebody calculated for you to lose your personality and just be a happy little cloud.
Hey, you kid! Get off of my lawn!
We are not missing any dialogue, you promise, yes? No, we are not missing anything. He really just basically tells Raziel he's gonna kill him. Okay, fine. So anyway, about Taylor's existential crisis, yes.
I'm just saying, I don't see the difference between being happy all the time versus not existing. Except for that, a god makes you happy all the time. If God were made of tentacles, that would be a Lovecraft thing.
No, Taylor, God is just an all-powerful being that far exceeds your ability to understand, and you have no way of affecting God or changing his mind about anything because he has a preordained plan, and he loves you.
But the only thing that doesn't make that Lovecraftian is the love part at the end.
Well, the love part is what's important.
See, but the Lovecraft thing is that the universe is vast and doesn't care about you. Everything else is more important than you. Like, you are not the chosen children. Religion kinda adds in that, oh yes, you are the chosen children, but you're still so insignificant, and you don't really matter. And I just don't see how that's more comforting than the assumption that there's nothing at all.
Well, I guess it's all kind of a matter of perspective, isn't it? I always sort of like the idea that God can't really predict all situations because there are a lot of things that are random, but he has the power to assume what would happen if certain things went certain ways. So, like, you still have free will, but there's not really a plan. Like, there's not an immutable plan. That defies the narrative of God being all-powerful, though, you know. Yes, whatever. I don't know. This is why I don't think about it very often. It's not really my job. I'll leave that to theologians or whoever.
The bottom line for me is I'm just saying that a void with nothing in it seems more comforting than assuming that there's a purposeful thing waiting for you. It's less scary in my opinion.
Well, oh, speaking of things waiting for you, I want Raziel to get a farm and a dog, and then, like, have him meet some girl who lives next door, and then he strikes up a conversation with her, and she's blind. And she doesn't know he's a blue skeleton with no penis. And she's a lesbian, yes! No, because if she's a lesbian, it's a romance, Peyton. So if she's a lesbian, then how do they fall in love? Well, there's a platonic love, yes! And Raziel doesn't know that.
That's workable, right? There's still comedic elements there, like Raziel thinks they're hitting it off, but she knows that he's a guy, and he thinks that she's catching on to the fact that he's a vampire, but it's just not working because he's a guy.
And she has comically large boobs, yes. Okay, well, you guys have kind of changed the premise that I was going for, so what's the moral at the end? The moral is that lesbians are great, yes. And Raziel is great, yes. And boobs are great, yes. And also, Raziel has the dog, yes. Okay, these are like reasons to see the film. These are not morals. Well, then Raziel also gets comically large boobs at the end, and they are so soft. And Raziel learns boobs really are the greatest, yes. Moral over. Well, now I had the air reaver. Okay, you guys are screwing with me, yes. This is not all the dialogue that is had here. No, it really is. This is just a stepping stone from here to there. We had to get the air reaver because it's one of the reavers. You're saying this whole thing could be cut from the game, yes? Yeah, probably. But there was an air reaver in the last game. We have to get it this game. We did it. It's complete. It's been done.
Well, it could be cut from a story, but, you know, there's the puzzles and the boss fight, so gameplay-wise, you know, it didn't hurt.
Yeah, gameplay-wise, fine, but story-wise, no, we could cut all of this.
When people talk about games being art and whether or not they have good narratives, I think this is one of the things that really kind of mucks it all up for gaming. Like, if you have a game that's just a story, it's a walking simulator, or it's just all cutscenes, it's practically a movie, and that's kind of lame. It's supposed to be interactive. But in a real game, you could get trapped in a paper bag for 4 hours, and as long as the gameplay is good, people would totally accept that.
Taylor, why do you say that? Like, about games being art? Like, games are animation, and literally art, and writing, and I guess, like, computer engineering because of all the coding, but it's basically all art. Like, it is art. The only people who debate over whether or not games are art are people who went to school for that, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, high art, I guess? I guess that's what they mean.
High art, like what, like film?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the difference between a game and a film? I mean, like, in terms of the kind of creative juice that goes into it.
Well, film is, like, less pulpy, I guess.
Yeah, no, like, pulp is totally not considered art in the film world. Like Pulp Fiction, for example, that was just a total wash.
I don't know.
Games will be art when they can depict fully believable nudity, yes. You know, you might be onto something there. Yes, think of all major forms of art. What do they all have in common? Boobies.
Boobies in context, maybe.
Still, boobies. Yes, that's sort of the opposite of what all the art police have been saying. Well, you'll know what else goes into high art? Defying the art police, all the time. Every time, yes. I guess that's true, yeah. The art police say there's too many boobies. How can we take you seriously with all these boobies? So you go to your hall, and in furious rage, you perfect the ultimate engine to simulate boobies to perfection. And then you take it to the public and you say, gaze upon my splendor, yes. It is I who have perfected boobies in 3D. Tremble before my prowess! Okay, so what you're saying is that the Dead or Alive crew is like the closest to having true art in the video game world.
I think it's really more about the message, Ray. And shut up, I'll do what I want is a very time-honored message in art.
Well, I think it's just really hard not to be passionate about telling everyone to shut up while you do what you want to do. But anyway, though, on that note, here looks like a good place to stop for now. So thanks for playing with us, everybody. Remember to like and subscribe and support us on Patreon and all that other good stuff. And otherwise, you have a good day.